Hello and welcome to a special presentation from In the Money Media. This is our analysis of the Southwest Stakes. Kentucky Derby points on the line at Oaklawn this weekend. We are hoping the weather is going to hold. We'll see about that. Certainly hasn't held up in the Northeast where I'm sitting and freezing as we chat. And it isn't much better in Pennsylvania where Mikey P, who joined me today, sits. Mikey, you excited for this rendition of the Southwest?
Very excited. It's $1 million pot. So, you see this Kentucky Derby a picture-taking shape now. That some of these bigger horses are ramping up, and it's exciting.
We'll have you covered with the Holy Bull analysis in another video you can check out. Please make sure that you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our YouTube exclusive content. You can also check us out on the podcast side. In the Money Players Podcast, wherever you get your pods. Want to mention that today's video is sponsored by our friends at Twin Spires. We have scheduled the $1,000 Oaklawn Southwest Showdown. One of the great things about Twin Spires contest platform, and there are a lot of them, but they're very nimble. If there is going to be weather, this will be rescheduled, races will be swapped, things will happen. So best way to keep track of everything going on the twinspires.com platform for contests is to navigate over there. Go to the website, hit that tournaments tab, and you can see almost daily qualifiers and feeders. Of course, it all leads to racing's latest major, Kentucky Derby betting challenge. Lots of opportunities to feed in and qualify for that terrific event coming up in now just a few months' time. Gosh, we're less than 100 days, if you can believe it. Mikey, let's talk about this Southwest Stakes and a man who does very well when he ships runners from his Southern California base to Oaklawn over the years. He's well represented by two runners, but let's take them individually. We'll have a look at Butane's run in the San Vicente, where he went close but ultimately disappointed, moving into this fast pace and ultimately disappointing. He was 1-2 in there, so happy, ended up getting the job done. Butane can only hold second in that spot. This is a horse I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be better going a bit farther. He obviously gets more ground today. Where do you stand with Butane?
I'm against him, honestly. I do think he's ultimately going to be better going short. He sort of needs to figure it out, right? I mean, he's been green in some of his races. I thought he was a little green in San Vicente in this stretch. I mean, when he was set down at the top of the stretch, he did move forward, but he was 1-2 in there. He had more experience, and he just didn't quite have the punch. So we'll see what happens. I mean, this is a typical Baffert progression here. He's putting him in the right spots. He has some speed figures that are competitive. It's just a matter of, okay, what's going to happen now that the distances get longer?
He cost something like $1.1 million. The stablemate, a relative bargain at $875. That's Litmus Test, this son of Nyquist, who ran with a lot of credit back in the Breeders Cup Juvenile, then came back and justified the 3-5 favoritism in the Los Al Futurity. This is a horse that's been on a lot of people's radars. He has something that we'll put Ted Noffey in his own category. Litmus Test has something that a lot of these others don't have, which is two pretty fast races, having run a 95 and a 96. I mean, he sets the standard on form and figures. How serious of a contender is he in your eyes?
I think he's a very serious contender in this race. He has quite the foundation so far. If you look, he's faced the top of the division, and he did it early. He was in the Del Mar Futurity in his second start. Now, he finished fourth in there, but ended up in the Breeders Futurity, tried the Kentucky, back to the Juvenile. And he raced well. He's gotten checks in all those races. He just found a couple horses better, especially Ted Noffey. Well, nobody was touching him last year. And this horse is solid. The Los Al Futurity, I thought, was a nice race. He got a perfect trip in there, but he finished it off nicely. Now Baffert shows up here. The Arkansas route has been very productive for him. He's a contender. He's very quick, and I do think the distance suits him. So he's one that I do think you need to have on tickets in this race.
Yeah, certainly makes sense as one to at least use defensively if you're talking about multi-race bets, etc. But I think as far as having a selection goes, you and I are both looking in different directions in here. Some big-name humans, it's not just Baffert, some other very big-name trainers with horses in this spot. Steve Asmussen's Soldier and Diplomat ran a solid race, a really solid race, I'd say, in Kentucky at the grade 2 level last time, making the move to the lead in that fast-paced affair, a race that ultimately went to further ado, but not a bad effort, maybe something to build on. Cost nearly $1 million. I wanted to maybe get a quick thought on him from you for the most the trainer with the most accomplishments at this point, I think we could say, to have not yet won a Derby. Perhaps this will be his year. We'll see how that plays out. Let me just throw the ball back in your court and ask you what you think of Soldier and Diplomat.
I think he's okay. I mean, if you remember last year, Magnitude sort of didn't show a whole lot early and then all of a sudden popped a big figure. So Asmussen's capable of this kind of move with horses like this. The fact that they're in here, I think, is encouraging. Made the lead at the top of the stretch there at Churchill. Just got run down by Further Ado. Well, Further Ado is a pretty nice horse. He's going to make noise on this 3-year-old, I think, division this year. So he's solid enough. I do think he's speedy. So from an outside post, he should be in a decent spot. I like Jose Ortiz getting on. So he's a horse that I do think will be a middle-priced horse that I would want to include in exotics in this race.
Ken McPeek has 2 runners. One of them we'll get to when we talk about the common race a little bit later in the video. Stay tuned. Make sure you get our selections at the end. Also, let us know your selections down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think is going to happen in this Southwest Stakes. But Liberty National is a runner that I have seen the name on some Derby lists. I thought that given he was the favorite in the Gun Runner, I thought had a pretty decent setup. Only ran an 80 Beyer speed figure, but Kenny McPeek, he's won the Derby before, and this is a horse that feels like he at least needs a shout out in our video.
Absolutely, and again, McPeek likes the Oaklawn route, but this horse I do think needs to find something here. Not only 4th lifetime start, but that Gun Runner, they crawled home in that race, and a couple of the horses that came out of that race, Chip Honcho, and the 3rd place finisher, Crown the Bucky, they didn't race it very well on the comeback in the Lecomte last week. So I do think that this one has to step up. He has to improve, but he does finish his races. So that's something that is encouraging.
Let's get to the common race, the Smarty Jones. 5 of these come out of here. We're going to roll the tape so you can see it yourself. I sort of had a strong opinion about this race, and it's to be maybe a little bit against the one who won, Strategic Risk for Mark Casse, simply because you want to talk about perfect trips. I thought this was basically the equivalent of a loose on the lead through very efficient / slow fractions for me, because you did have a horse making the running in here, but the horse was 50 to 1, could have been 500 to 1. Scarship, he was just ignored. Castellano did a great job getting what I would call the de facto front running trip, left alone on the lead. These were not fast fractions, and the runner that really interests me coming into here, strange tactics early in the race from Silent Tactic, who seemed to be throttled down by his jockey despite how slow proceedings were. Then I thought was pretty uncomfortable. You see in this video at times between horses, just not always easy for horses to show their best stuff. But what I really like is just the fact that this was the horse who was closing, getting into the mix, looked to me just visually like a horse who might be still figuring things out and have another chance to improve. But really what I like is goes from a race with no speed where he closed well to a race where I think there's going to be a ton of pace. I get it. He's not technically fast enough, having run just that 81 figure, but that was the first start on dirt for this Mark Casse runner. And to me, that says when they jump up their figure first time on a new surface, very often they'll keep doing it. For me, there's just a lot of arrows pointing in this direction. I think the horse will be a price. Also think this is really interesting breeding, right? Because he's by Tacitus, who's carrying that Tappet bloodline, only a $5,000 sire. Gun Runner on the bottom, but cost $500,000 at OBS April last year. That tells you this horse is a nice physical, and this could be a really interesting runner, I think. Am I out to lunch, or do you see where I'm coming from with this? And do you have any thoughts on any of the other runners exiting the Smarty Jones?
No, not at all. Actually, I do think that this is the one you want coming out of that Smarty Jones. And, that racetrack at Oaklawn on January the 3rd, it favored horses that were forward there. And this is Silent Tactic was a horse that made a nice move from off the pace, 3rd lifetime start. Now, Casse was absolutely on fire. And if you look, he's 48% at the meet so far at Oaklawn, and he was winning everywhere at that time. I mean, just every horse seemed to go forward. He showed up with Strategic Risk, and Silent Tactic went 1-2 in that Smarty Jones. Some long shots, filled out the rest of the spots that day. But I agree, Silent Tactic would be the one I want in that race, and this is a much more favorable pace scenario for him. They're going to go a lot quicker than 49.72 in this spot. So I'm curious to see if he can improve, and if he does, I do think that he could be on the wire here.
just because I mentioned the McPeek runners earlier, Sleeping on Freedom, the other one in here, who was sort of sticking on a little bit there late, but did end up getting out finished by like an 80-1 shot. So I don't know. I'm not as sanguine about his chances. I think we agree that about the one that we want coming out of that race, and that's Silent Tactic. We just have another minute or two here in this video, Mikey. We need to know, who's your selection?
Well, it's a horse we didn't talk about yet, and he's the likely favorite in here, and it's number 2, Decode. Now, this one debuted on December 14th at Oaklawn, the maiden special. He galloped him. He was the most, I would say, impressive maiden special winner so far, and that was a 6-furlong race. But this one jumped out of the gate from the 11 post and never looked a loser. Ended up with a 99 buyer while favored in that spot. Well, if you look at this horse's pedigree, has Speightstown on the top, you would think, okay, sprinty, but if you look at Speightstown a little bit further, he's just fine siring horses on the route side. So he's 18% going for horses with routes. I do think that is favorable. So, and the dam here, Dos Vinos, if you look, this one has a sibling here that is racing in Japan and has a mount and 8th win. So the pedigree could be in question. The stretch out could be in question, but this horse is fast. He has some hidden pedigree, and I do think that this race lacks a little bit of speed. He's going to go to the front and be tough to overhaul in here. So give me Decode in the Southwest.
I hear where you're coming from. I do have questions about those bloodlines, but you make great points about the sibling winning at 9 panels. And while you don't think longer, better, Speightstown, they certainly can win going farther. We've seen that. What a race this is. You just go through here, you look at some of these pedigrees, you look at horses, Decode costs $775. And we ran through some of the other high price tags. It's going to be fascinating to see. I have a feeling this could shake up our Kentucky Derby top 10 list. You can check out our video from last week elsewhere on the In the Money Media channel. Hey, maybe we'll even link to that at the end. This race really has the potential to shake that up. Thank you, Mikey, for joining. Thank you so much to our friends at Twin Spires for sponsoring this video. Make sure you go to twinspires.com, click over to that tournaments tab to make sure you see the complete schedule of events, and make sure you subscribe to the In the Money Media YouTube channel.